Newfoundland, an island of scenic roads, amazing wildlife, remote rail trail, incredible flora, and wild weather. This is Cycling Newfoundland. Fresh off the ferry from a dawn arrival in the town of Porto Basque, here began the crossing of the final province of my cross-Canada bike journey. The sun shone down and the spectacular long-range mountains towered above as I set off along the Trans-Canada Highway. With smooth pavement, nice shoulders, nearly no traffic, and propelled along by the prevailing westerly tailwinds, it was an incredible first day on the island along the highway. Just before pulling off the highway for the night, I had a wonderful chance reunion with some friends returning from a surf adventure, and then it was into a local campground to spend the night. The morning once again brought beautiful clear skies, and I set off, soon separating from the Trans-Canada for a detour through Stephenville Crossing. Oh, and happy Halloween! With some quick Gorilla Tape modifications to my jacket, I got into the spirit and turned into a pumpkin cyclist. Another beautiful sunset led me back to the highway, and I finished the night with a peaceful lakeside camp by the road and a cozy crackling campfire. The morning air was cool and crisp as I descended down into Brook. I spent most of the morning recharging and warming up here before carrying on up the Humber River towards Deer Lake. After a night of wild camping by the lake, scattered storms rolled in, and I said goodbye to the highway for an adventure into the heart of Newfoundland.
Take the trail from here for about 125 clicks. Head out to Badger over the Plateau. It's going to be terribly rough and bouncy, but hopefully with some good views and wildlife.
I set off east along the Trailway, and about 5 kilometers after leaving town, my wildlife dreams came true. After seeing this caribou herd on the trail, I observed them for about 30 minutes as they fed in the bogs and mixed forests nearby. What a beautiful experience this was, to live this moment alone in the wilderness amongst the company of these incredible creatures. Of course, as this was the end of the rutting season, I was very cautious to keep a respectful distance. Around 30,000 woodland caribou inhabit the island of Newfoundland. As winter approaches, they migrate from the higher elevation barren lands down into the mixed forest seen here. Regretfully unable to live the rest of my life away from society and foraging peacefully with the caribou herd, I carried on down the trailway. Crossing below the main dam of Grand Lake, it was slow going as I worked my way through the rough terrain. The winds howled from the west, pushing me along the rough trail across gravel, sand, and bridges.
Coming down the trail into Howley, and the wind is howling.
In the town of Howley, I passed the monument commemorating the introduction of moose to Newfoundland. Not originally a native species, 4 moose brought here in 1904 have now multiplied to a population of 100,000. As a result, the moose has become an iconic part of the Newfoundland culture and identity. After the brief stop in Howley, it was off into the most remote stretch of the Newfoundland T'Railway, with 100 kilometers of rough gravel trail before the next town. As winds blew, gentle rains fell on and off, and the temperature dropped, I camped the night trailside by Kitty's Brook. Soon after breaking camp, I found snowline on the trail. I met some friendly moose hunters up here on an ATV, heading to their off-grid cabin. For them, seeing a cyclist out here in November was probably rarer than a Sasquatch, and they kindly gifted me some snacks to fuel my journey. Around 400 meters above sea level, the forests opened up to barren windswept lands, and I passed the topsail peaks over the summit of the Trailway. The Newfoundland T'Railway stretches 880 kilometers between Port aux Basques and St. John's. Following an old rail line, it's been converted into mixed-use trail. Primarily used by off-road vehicles, the trail is extremely rough and for cycling is better suited to fat bikes or mountain bikes. Given my setup, I knew I wouldn't have had time to finish the entire trailway before getting snowed in, and so chose this remote section to experience the trail's beauty and the spectacular Newfoundland terrain. That night, I reached the relative haven of Millertown Junction. There are no services here, but the presence of a few dozen houses provided a nice sense of comfort, with fewer concerns about unwanted wildlife interactions. A final 25-kilometer push on the trailway brought me to the town of Badger, and after a big brunch feast, it was off again with the traffic on the Trans-Canada Highway.
Beautiful collection of tamarack right here.
The most vibrant turquoise bike lane I've ever seen led into the town of Bishop's Falls, where I met some incredibly friendly Newfoundlanders, was treated to a delicious moose burger meal at a local restaurant, and camped the night in the local municipal park. In the morning, I managed to stay off the highway for a beautiful 25-kilometer section of bayside riding.
So beautiful.
on the highway once more, it was through the city of Gander and off into the evening with a beautiful sunset. After leaving the highway in the dark, I descended down into Glover Town. With my guard down after a long day of riding, I nearly crashed into a big bull moose standing nonchalantly in the middle of the road. This is the only evidence I have of said moose, a hasty phone video looking back as it wandered off the road. So yeah, right, lots of moose out here in Newfoundland. Watch out, boy. I camped the night in the local park, then explored a beautiful 4-kilometer interpretive loop trail, learning about the incredible peatlands that cover 20% of Newfoundland. These spongy fens and bogs, made of layers of sphagnum moss, are unique biodiverse ecosystems teeming with life. After crossing into Terra National Park, I took another brief detour to cycle a peaceful 3-kilometer loop around the Sandy Pond day use area. With not another soul in sight this late in the season, I must say, I was really liking it. With just over 200 kilometers left to the finish line, I checked the weather forecast and decided to squeeze in some extra cycling before my flight out. So I turned off the highway and headed for a loop around the Bonavista Peninsula. The dying embers of a previous day's Guy Fawkes bonfire on the side of the road called me in. There I met a very kind Newfoundlander who reignited the fire, shared food and stories, offered a camp spot, and gave me a wonderful tour of the property the next morning. Newfoundlanders are known for their incredible hospitality, and it was wonderful to experience the smiles, curiosity, and welcoming attitudes of all the locals I met across the island. After a long day of fast cycling on quiet roads with a nice tailwind, I made it out to Cape Bonavista as rains began to fall. I set up my tent on the lee side of a picnic shelter that was locked for the winter. Little did I know that in the middle of the night, the winds would pick up dramatically and shift direction.
It's 3:30 in the morning. I picked the least windiest spot up against the wall, and now the wind is quite literally coming from every direction, and my tent is already like half destroyed.
Well, I was too tired to try and pack up the tent in the middle of the night, but after 6 years of owning it and hundreds of nights calling it home, it had served its purpose well. Rest in peace, trusty tent. At least there was a spectacular partial lunar eclipse to keep my mind off things in the morning. The Bonavista Peninsula is believed to have been the landing spot of John Cabot in 1497, the first European explorer to set foot on the North American continent since the early Norse expeditions. With the wind absolutely howling, I turned back down the peninsula, fighting a ferocious and furious headwind. I made a quick stop to check out the Double Arch Sea Cave in Dungeon Provincial Park, part of the UNESCO Discovery Global Geopark. The trailway had an offshoot that extended the length of the peninsula. While more protected from the wind, it was extremely rough and still slower than the road. It was an extra long day fighting the headwind at about 11 kilometers an hour. I managed to patch the tent up just enough and camped the night in an RV park gravel lot. Leaving the peninsula in the morning, I enjoyed a nice dozen kilometers on the trailway to Clarenville, appreciating the separation from the road as the first sea level snow squalls of the season hit the island.
Coming into Clarenville, you can see the blowing snow. Going with the wind, it's pretty nice.
After stocking up on a nice new pair of warm, woolly winter socks, I continued down the highway. At this point in the journey, exhaustion was catching up with me. I only stopped to film the amazing statue of Morris the Moose, then pushed on several hours into the night, feeling safe with the shoulders on the highway and the minimal traffic. I spent my last night camping in my battered tent at Bellevue Beach. And then it was off for the final 24 hours of the journey across Canada. After about 70 kilometers of relentless cycling down the highway, a scene like this that seemed to repeat endlessly, I turned off the highway towards Avondale to savor the final moments of the Newfoundland T'Railway. From Conception Bay south, the Trailway finally became non-motorized, and as such, was a smooth and fast ride over the last hills into the city of St. John's. I rented a place to stay, and after a few hours of restless anticipation trying to sleep, set off before dawn for the final push to Cape Spear. After 15,000 kilometers of adventure and exploration across this magnificent country, the easternmost point of Canada and of the entire continent of North America came into view. It's done! Here at Cape Spear, I stared off into the waters of the mighty Atlantic Ocean. I stood at the edge of a continent and the culmination of a dream, a journey measured not just in distance, but in rich experiences. In the places seen, the people met, the challenges overcome. In the joys and the moments of awe, in wondrous wildlife and wild weather, the heat, the cold, the wind in my hair. From mountains to marshes, plains to prairies, forests to fields, badlands to beaches. 15,000 kilometers across Canada. What an incredible adventure. What a moment of profound gratitude and awe. Now, I know I haven't shown any of the other people that have helped along the way, but I just want to say that they were so instrumental to making this journey happen, and I received such an astounding amount of help, kindness, and generosity along the way. From the bottom of my heart, thank you to everyone. And to those that support these videos with kind comments, likes, and subscriptions, it does mean the world to me. And just one more thing. Canada was just the beginning of my cycling journey around the world, and those stories will be coming soon. Thank you.